This video is about how to solve rational equations. I have here two examples of rational equations. This is a simpler example because we have a single fraction equaling a single fraction, and that will let us solve it with a different method where we actually cross multiply and set the two things equal to each other. I'll show you that in a second. This is a more common rational equation where you have, instead of just a single fraction equals single fraction, you have two fractions over here and then kind of one over here, so you can't do the trick where you cross multiply. So instead, we're going to have a different method, which I'll talk about in a second for this. For both of these, though, it's important to keep in mind that sometimes you can solve these equations, get solutions, but they don't actually work in the original equations. So you always have to go back and check to make sure that whatever answer you get, you have to make sure it doesn't make your denominator 0. Okay, so this first example is one of the simpler examples because it just has a single fraction equaling a single fraction. So we're going to do this by cross multiplying. We're going to take the top here and multiply it by the bottom there and set that equal to the bottom here multiplied by the top there. So what it's going to look like is 2 times x plus 1, and that will be equal to 5 times 4x. And then over here on the left we'll distribute the 2, so we'll get 2x plus 2 equals, and 5 times 4x will be 20x. And now we'll get all of our x's onto the right hand side, subtract 2x here, subtract 2x here. Those cancel, so we get 2 equals 18x. And then lastly we'll divide both sides by 18. And then we get x equals 1/9. So that's our answer, and in this case we don't have to worry about it making our denominator 0 because we don't have any x's in the denominator, so that is our answer. Now for the more complicated rational equation, we're going to have to do it in these 4 steps. First we're going to factor each denominator and find the lowest common denominator. Then we're going to multiply each term by the lowest common denominator, and at this point you should be able to cross cancel to get rid of all your fractions. We're going to solve the equation we get out of that, and at the very end we're going to make sure that our solutions don't make the original equation undefined. Okay, we're going to start by factoring our denominators, and we have x minus 1, which is already factored. This piece doesn't have a denominator. X squared minus 1 can be factored further as a difference of squares, so we'd factor it as x plus 1 times x minus 1. And so now, when we look at our denominators, we have x minus 1, x plus 1. Our lowest common denominator is going to be that x plus 1 times x minus 1. And now we're going to take that and we're going to multiply it by all 3 pieces. So here we go. I've multiplied our x plus 1 times x minus 1 to this piece up here, this piece right here, and this piece right here. And our job now is to do cross-canceling. So first of all, remember that's gone, we factored it down here, so on the right hand side x plus 1 and x plus 1 cancels, x minus 1 and x minus 1 cancels, so we're just left with 4 over there. For the 1 here, nothing's going to cancel, so we're actually just going to keep this whole piece, and in fact I'll multiply it together as this in a second. And over here the x minus 1s are going to cancel, so that cancels with that. So what we have left on this first piece is 2 times x plus 1. What we have left over in the middle piece, 1 times the x plus 1, x minus 1, I'm just going to call that x squared minus 1. So we don't have to multiply it back out. And on the right hand side, all the x plus 1s and minus 1s canceled, so we're just left with 4. Now this equation has an x squared in it, so we're going to have to rearrange it as a quadratic. So first though, we're going to have to distribute the 2 here. So we'll get 2x plus 2 plus x squared minus 1 equals 4. Then I'm going to rearrange it with the x squared in front, plus 2x, and the 2 minus 1 we'll go ahead and just call plus 1 equals 4. And then lastly, if we want to solve the quadratic, we have to get everything on one side, set it equal to 0, so we're going to subtract 4 from both sides. So the equation we're actually solving would be this, x squared plus 2x minus 3 equals 0. And then to solve this equation, we're either going to have to use the quadratic formula or factor it. Factoring is a little bit quicker here, so we're going to factor this. We need two numbers that multiply to two numbers that multiply to negative 3 but add to positive 2. Those two numbers should be a positive 3 and a negative 1, right? Because 3 times negative 1 is negative 3, 3 plus negative 1 is positive 2. And then we set each of these pieces equal to 0. X plus 3 equals 0 gives us x equals negative 3. And then x minus 1 equals 0 gives us x equals 1. So those are our two solutions, except, remember, we have to double check that they work in the original denominators. And if you look at this one over here, x minus 1, the value of 1 minus 1 would be 0. That's actually going to make this piece undefined. Actually makes this piece undefined as well. So this original, it doesn't work in the, this solution doesn't work in the original equation. It makes it undefined. So we actually have to eliminate that solution. And x equals negative 3, since this doesn't make the denominator 0, that is our only true solution. So that's it.